Vlad Dracula, the war against the Ottomans. In the middle of the 15th century, the shadow of the Ottoman Empire stretched across Europe like an unending storm. Under Sultan Mehmed II, known to history as Mehmed the Conqueror, the Turks had captured Constantinople in 1453, shattering the last vestige of the Byzantine Empire. From that moment on, the world realized the Ottomans were not just a rising power, they were an unstoppable juggernaut. Christian kingdoms trembled, Hungary fortified its borders, and the papacy scrambled for coalitions. And in the midst of this storm stood a small principality, Wallachia, a land of forests, mountains, and rivers. Strategically located between Christian Europe and the Muslim Ottoman Empire, Wallachia was a buffer state, but also a pawn. For centuries, its princes were forced to bow before one master or another. And it was here, in this fragile realm, that Vlad III, Vlad Dracula, later called Vlad the Impaler, would rise as a figure of defiance. But this was not the story of a noble crusader. No, this was a tale soaked in blood, terror, and strategy. Vlad did not wage war with noble speeches or shining armor. He fought with fire, steel, and shadows. Against an empire far greater than his own, he would turn to the only weapon he had: fear, the trigger of war. By the early 1460s, Wallachia was already under immense pressure. The Ottomans demanded tribute, an annual payment in gold, and more disturbingly, a tax of children who were taken as slaves and soldiers into the Janissary Corps. Vlad's father had once agreed to these humiliating terms, but Vlad Dracula was not his father. In 1461, Mehmed sent emissaries to Vlad's court, demanding tribute and obedience. Among their demands was the traditional gesture. Wallachian rulers were expected to remove their hats in the Sultan's presence, bowing their heads low. Vlad, a master of calculated insult, ordered the envoys to leave their turbans on, and then had them nailed to their skulls so they would never take them off. It was an act of open defiance. Vlad had declared, without words, that Wallachia would not kneel. The war begins. In response, Mehmed prepared an army to march against Wallachia, but Vlad knew his land. He knew its forests, its rivers, its winters. More importantly, he knew he could not win in open battle. The Ottoman army was vast, numbering tens of thousands, trained and disciplined, while Vlad's forces were a fraction of that. So Vlad unleashed terror. In 1461 and 1462, he crossed the Danube and launched raids into Ottoman territory. His soldiers burned villages, poisoned wells, and slaughtered populations without mercy. Contemporary sources claim that over 20,000 Turks and Bulgarians were killed in these raids. Vlad ordered bodies to be impaled on stakes along the roads, entire fields of corpses swaying in the wind, their faces twisted in agony. This was more than cruelty. It was psychological warfare. Every stake was a warning. Wallachia was not an easy prey. The night attack at Targoviste. The Ottomans responded with fury. In the summer of 1462, Sultan Mehmed II himself marched into Wallachia with a massive army. Estimates range from 60,000 to 90,000. To put that in perspective, Vlad's army was perhaps 20,000 at best. The imbalance was catastrophic. But Vlad was cunning. He refused to give Mehmed the satisfaction of battle. Instead, he burned his own villages, destroyed his crops, and poisoned his own wells. His people fled into the forests, leaving nothing behind for the Ottomans to use. The advancing army found only ashes and shadows. Then came the most infamous night of all, the night attack at Targoviste. On the night of June 17, 1462, Vlad disguised his men in Turkish uniforms, split them into small bands, and launched a surprise assault on the Ottoman camp. The Wallachians slipped silently into the tents, slaughtering soldiers in their sleep, setting fires and spreading chaos. Their true target was Sultan Mehmed himself. Though Vlad did not succeed in assassinating the Sultan, the attack caused panic. Contemporary chronicles describe screams, burning tents, and rivers of blood under the moonlight. Thousands of Ottomans were killed. The Sultan himself barely escaped with his life. It was one of the most daring raids in medieval history, and it cemented Vlad's reputation as a master of fear. The Forest of the Impaled. But perhaps the most infamous moment of this campaign came when Mehmed advanced toward Targoviste, Vlad's capital. What he found there would haunt his army forever. Before the city stood a grotesque sight, a forest of 20,000 impaled corpses, men, women, and children, prisoners, enemies, perhaps even traitors. Their bodies lined the roads for miles, swaying like ghastly trees. The stench was overwhelming. The sight was beyond comprehension. Even hardened soldiers trembled at the horror. According to legend, Mehmed himself was shaken. He is said to have turned away, remarking, "It is not possible to deprive him of his country, a man who has done such great deeds, who has such a diabolical understanding of how to govern his people." In that moment, Vlad achieved what few dared to hope. He broke the morale of an army far greater than his own. The long retreat. Yet, despite his brilliance, Vlad could not hold forever. The Ottoman numbers were simply overwhelming. The Sultan eventually withdrew, but not before installing Vlad's brother, Radu the Handsome, as a rival ruler. Radu had long been in Ottoman favor, and unlike Vlad, he was willing to cooperate with them. Civil war broke out between the brothers. Many Wallachian boyars, tired of Vlad's cruelty, sided with Radu. Over time, Vlad was abandoned, forced to retreat into Transylvania, where he sought refuge with his old ally, King Matthias Corvinus of Hungary. But here too Vlad's fortunes turned sour. Instead of granting him aid, Matthias had him arrested. To Europe, Vlad was both a hero and a monster. The Pope praised him as a defender of Christendom, yet German pamphlets circulated lurid tales of his cruelty, tales that would later inspire the legend of Dracula. And so, the war of Vlad Dracula against the Ottomans was not just a military struggle. It was a battle of images, of fear, of terror. A battle that transformed a man into a legend, and a legend into a myth that still haunts the world today.